Corridor under fire. A geopolitical flashpoint reignited. Israeli forces seized control of the Philadelphi corridor, a narrow strip along the Egypt-Gaza border, sparking fresh violence. This strategic artery, vital for Gaza, became the epicenter of conflict, highlighting the complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian struggle. Operation Iron Grip, swift, decisive, and controversial. The IDF moved with lightning speed, deploying troops, tanks, and armored vehicles into Gaza.
Israel accused Hamas of using the corridor for weapons smuggling and attacks. The IDF targeted Hamas military infrastructure, resulting in significant civilian casualties and widespread destruction. Israel defended its actions as self-defense, accusing Hamas of using civilians as human shields. The IDF released footage of Hamas operatives in civilian areas to justify its targeting.
As bombs rained down, Gaza plunged into a humanitarian crisis. Hospitals overwhelmed with casualties struggled to cope.
Electricity supplies were disrupted, water treatment plants damaged, and sewage systems overflowed. Food, medicine, and other essentials dwindled as the Philadelphi corridor was tightly controlled. International aid organizations warned of a looming catastrophe if humanitarian access wasn't restored. The World Health Organization called for an immediate ceasefire and unimpeded humanitarian access.
A chorus of condemnation, the world reacts to Israel's move. The international community reacted with condemnation, concern, and calls for restraint.
The UN Security Council convened an emergency session, urging all parties to exercise maximum restraint. The US expressed concern about the humanitarian impact and called for de-escalation. The EU condemned the violence on both sides and called for an immediate ceasefire. The Arab League condemned Israel's actions and called for international intervention. Several Arab countries summoned Israeli ambassadors to express strong condemnation. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation called for an immediate halt to military operations in Gaza.
Navigating the fallout, regional stability hangs in the balance. The crisis threatened to unravel peace accords between Israel and its Arab neighbors.
The specter of a multi-front war loomed large, with Hezbollah and Iranian-backed militias closely watching. The UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco, which normalized relations with Israel, balanced ties with public anger over Gaza. The UN Security Council proved unable to agree on a unified response. The US shielded Israel from meaningful international pressure.
The crisis underscored the urgency of finding a just and lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Between a rock and a hard place, Israel's security dilemma. Israel's control over the Philadelphia corridor highlights its security dilemma with Hamas.
The corridor is essential to prevent weapons smuggling and attacks.
However, Israel's actions exacerbate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and fuel Palestinian resentment. The blockade inflicts suffering on civilians, depriving them of essential goods and health care.
This cycle of violence endangers Israeli security.
A sustainable solution must address both security concerns and Palestinian aspirations. The specter of a wider war, fears of regional conflagration. The crisis in Gaza raised fears of a wider regional conflict.
The volatile mix of actors and interests creates a tinderbox environment. Hezbollah threatened to open a second front against Israel if violence continues.
Hezbollah's involvement would dramatically escalate the situation. Iran condemned the Israeli offensive and vowed to support the Palestinian resistance. The international community must act decisively to prevent a wider war. Charting a path forward towards a lasting resolution.
The cycle of violence exacts a heavy toll on both sides. The international community must seize the moment to break the cycle and chart a path to peace.
A lasting solution requires addressing political, security, and economic grievances.
The U.S. has a crucial role in encouraging Israel to make necessary concessions.
The road to peace is long, but the alternative, a perpetual cycle of violence, is unacceptable.